DC Studios has dropped the second trailer for James Gunn's Superman, written and directed by him, coming out this summer. And with this new trailer, we get a much better look at what the movie's going to be like because we hear the dialogue from the characters, we see more of the characters, and I wanted to give you my thoughts on the Superman trailer. It's up right now on the DC site, on the DC YouTube page, and a bunch of other places. I was going to do a reaction, but it's hard to do them via copyright because there's always going to be a copyright claim. So I just kind of am going to give you my thoughts. The trailer begins with Lois basically being granted an interview with Superman as Superman. Now, this is obviously going to harken back to the very first Superman film from 1978 with Christopher Reeve, where they have that awesome scene where she interviews him. And that's something that's been done in a lot of Superman stories. And I really like that Gunn is, with this film, not afraid to borrow from Superman's history. We hear a little bit of the John Williams music in the first trailer. We see imagery that kind of looks very comic booky. We see some stuff that was borrowed even from Snyder. You know, we'll talk about that shortly. But this seems to be a good amalgam of all things Superman. And having that interview between Lois and Superman and Kal-El, because it's not Clark, when she interviews him, that could be a really powerful, touching scene. And I think that the interview part could actually replace having a long origin story. Superman 1 from Richard Donner, the 78 one, and Man of Steel both spend the first third of the movie, or at least the first act, with the explosion of Krypton and all that. They don't have to tell that here. They could do it with flashbacks. They could just have him summarize it, because there seems to be a lot packed into this movie. There's a lot of characters, and I'm wondering, like, if Gunn was sort of looking at this as more of like, let's bring in Superman and his amazing friends. That could be it. He does know how to write team comic book movies with very likable characters, but at its core, it has to be about Superman. This has to be a movie where when you walk out of the theater, you want to see more of this version of Superman. Now, the part that James Gunn it's not Snyder's original idea, but he's the one that sort of made it a plot point in his movies, is the idea that humanity does not just accept Superman. There's controversy behind Superman, this godlike being coming down to Earth, and the implications of that from people politically, in the world of religion, and the backlash against Superman. And I like that Gunn is borrowing that, because I did feel like that was one of the more interesting things that Snyder tackled, which is, if there really was a messianic figure like Superman who actually came to the real world, there would be a lot of people who rejected him, even if he had good intentions. They wouldn't trust him. It's just logical. That's how people are, you know? So that's a story aspect that I hope that Gunn can really flesh out. Now, one of the things that I thought was a bit off-putting, I did not like this, is with David Corenswet's portrayal of Superman, he seems to get pretty easily irritated at Lois here. You know, she starts to ask him the hard questions, and in the past, Superman has always had a soft spot for Lois, but here he kind of seems more annoyed and more irritated when she brings up the fact that, yeah, you may have stopped this war, but the war's not really stopped, is it? You know, you may have caused more problems, and there's truth to that. But, like, the other thing, too, is that this is also a trailer, so when the scene itself plays out in the movie, there could be a lot more dialogue where Lois really starts to hammer Superman on some of his controversial decisions. You know, it just seems like I felt like I guess, again, they're borrowing a lot of, you know, from Smallville and all that, but I wanted a little bit more Christopher Reeve, because the Christopher Reeve Superman was always very forgiving of people. Very forgiving. I mean, he was always trying to look at the bright side of people, and it cost him. And I think we need a Superman like that to kind of, for us, like in the real world, to inspire us as a character. There's a scene of like a skyscraper falling that looks incredible. You can tell that the special effects team went back in and really, really, dotted the I's and crossed the T's. This is going to look great in IMAX. And this isn't even the end of the movie. It's still being edited as we speak. They're still, fine tuning the effects. So the effects from trailer 1 look a heck of a lot better than, the effects from trailer 2 look a heck of a lot better than the ones from trailer 1. You hear like the remix of the John Williams music, and then we have like a bunch of stuff going on. We see Lex Luthor. We have a monologue from Clark's dad talking about like his choices or what makes you who you are. We see an attack on the Fortress of Solitude. There's a lot to this movie. This is I don't know if the runtime's been revealed yet, but this looks like it's going to be close to the 3-hour mark, because there's a lot of new characters, man. There's a lot of characters. They have to obviously establish Lois, Clark, and Lex. You have to have that trio, but they've also got to establish these other characters. They got Lanterns in there. They've got Ultraman. They've got to establish all these characters. And this movie, at least as far as showing us how it's going to look, the movie has almost like a dream-like, I don't know if Gunn is using a special filter for the camera, but some scenes have this almost dream-like look to them, which is a different look than the Snyder or the Donner movies had. It's like he's really doing his own thing while still paying tribute. Now, I do have some concerns because James Gunn kind of goes a bit too far with the comedy, and I do love his comedy and Peacemaker and stuff like that. But with Superman, I'm fine with a little bit of comedy. You got to have some levity with some of the story here, but it's all about the emotion. Can you hit the emotion? We actually hear Nicholas Hoult and his voiceover as Lex Luthor, and how Superman is an it, and he's now become the focal point of the world's conversation, which of course he wants to be. It's all about attention. It used to be about real estate, now it's about attention. But he seems to be playing it very comic booky, very like mustache twirling, which, look, man, I think that comic book films with characters like Killmonger and Thanos and hopefully Doctor Doom have kind of taken the Saturday morning, what we viewed as that, and really sort of evolved it to having stronger three-dimensional villains. But when it comes to this first Superman movie, if they're going to make Lex just a mustache twirling villain, it just fits with Gunn. Like, it fits with the stuff that Gunn... And keep in mind that in the Guardians movies, Kurt Russell as Ego was a very three-dimensional villain, I thought. He was probably the most interesting villain of the three from the Guardians movies. But if they want to play up some of that in here, that's fine. I really am wondering if there's more to Luthor, like what he really wants to do in this story. There's a scene near the end of the trailer where Superman and Lois are like kissing and they're like floating. He's like floating up with her. And that image right there is, to me, like what encapsulates exactly like that image, not just of them kissing, but of him flying and holding her. Like, that is the relationship. That is Lois and Clark. Like, that is, in every interpretation of Superman, that imagery, right, is literally what that relationship is. They're both there for each other. And I'm hoping that's near the end of the movie. I kind of would like it if maybe they had a little bit of a bumpy road, and then eventually, by the end, there's a character arc for both of them. James Gunn certainly does know how to tell character arcs. So there should be like I said, that image is great. I saw it and I was like, okay, like, James Gunn is a huge comic book fan. He loves Richard Donner. Like, he's going to deliver, bro. At least I hope he does. I hope he does. Just having the John Williams music there, like, that's already enough to know that, like, the respect that James Gunn has for Richard Donner. When he passed away, I did a whole video about it because it hit me. But man, I really want to like this movie. I'm gonna be so mad if I go see this movie and it sucks. I want to love this film. I really, really do. Please, I want to walk in there and be taken on a ride. I really hope that the finished product ends up being good because the whole DC counts on it. What did you think? Let me know in the comments.